Welcome to the MVP Show. Before we chat with today's guest, here's a quick message from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge. This will be depending when you're listening to it, the 5th or 6th year I'm going to be running the program to help turbocharge people in their career in Microsoft Business applications. If you want to be mentored in the next 90-Day Mentoring Challenge, please go to nz365guy.com/mentoring. It is 100% free, apart from your time investment. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from England. He works at Data8 currently as the Chief Technologist. He has been working on how to use Azure Flow or Power Automate and other different apps to monitor diabetes. He's a director at Data8 for 14 years and works at Sage prior to that, developing business accounting systems. When not working, he is at home with his 2 boys, spending time building Lego or shelves to hold the Lego. Check him out on Twitter, MarkMPN, or his blog, markcarrington.dev. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, Mark.
Did I get that all right?
Yeah, I think so. Although, Lego has evolved into Pokemon at the moment. So, yeah, everything is, it's getting beyond me now, I'm afraid.
Is there Pokemon characters that they can collect, kids?
Yeah, I think so. Although, they had me to start with, but then, it's expanded and it's just gone a bit crazy, and they're kind of leaving me behind now.
So are they paying the Pokemon app as well?
Yeah, so at least we're getting out of the house a bit because, it's through lockdown, it was very easy to just kind of stay at home, and they got used to this idea that they stay at home all the time now. So, yeah, just trying to prize them away, not get them entirely away from the screens, go playing Pokemon Go, but at least we're getting them out of the house now. So.
Funny you say that. I wonder what the impact in the years ahead on kids are going to be from this massive period of lockdown, whether they're going to trace anything to it or the impact.
It's going to be, funding decades of research for psychologists, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes, on how kids bonded with their parents more because they were at home or were driven crazy
could go
from
either way, couldn't it?
Yeah. So what part of England are you in?
I'm in Chester, up in the northwest. It's great. It's before lockdown, it was a 10-minute commute into the office. That was lovely. Sort of, you're not spending hours of your day commuting everywhere. Lovely historic town. Where I grew up. Went away to work at Sage up in Newcastle, up in the northeast, after university. Came back here again after we got fed up with that hour-and-a-half commute every day. Gets a bit soul destroying. Came back here, started the family. We've been back here for 15 years, I think now.
And were you one of the founders at Data8?
Not quite. I joined about a year and a half after they founded it. I think I was 4th employee there. So it was a bit of a change coming from a big sort of PLC environment from up at Sage. It's great. You sort of feel like you can go into work and really have an impact in a day. More so over 14 years. I couldn't imagine swapping out to one of these sort of the big consultancies or something like that. It's I think that would be too much of a culture shock for me to go back to that now.
So how many staff do you have at the moment?
I think we're on around 20 at the moment.
Wow, it's a good size though.
Yeah, so there's a good size technical teams and sales, marketing, a little bit, but we're all very office based, and now being a bit more spread around the country now. And people sort of moved around during lockdown, decided this home working thing is for them. Sort of settled down in other bits of the country, and it's still nice to be able to go back and see people. But it's a bit of a good sort of flexible mix at the moment.
What's your take on the post-COVID world and the concept of where you work for an employer? Particularly, and I'm talking about in our industry where, it generally involves a keyboard and a high amount of brain skill. rather than necessary manual or physical labor, which of course does need to be done in person. And, a road worker can't choose to work from home type thing, right?
Yeah.
And
So I think um, I think it comes down to probably time zones more than the actual location. Um, we can do a lot individually behind the keyboard, but I think it really comes together as a team, and you need to be able to communicate as a team. So if I was if two of us were working together, then we would have a few hours a day overlap, to be able to sort of catch up on where we're at and do all that. And I'm sure we would get a lot done, but it wouldn't be the same as being able to just sort of call each other up whenever you just you hit a bit of a stumbling block. You just need to bounce some ideas off each other. I think that's where the team really starts to come together. So yeah, I think the remote working thing can work very well, but you do need to have somebody else, I think, to talk to, because otherwise you'll go slightly insane.
I was on a project in Hong Kong some years ago, and the PM for the project was in London, and there was some time overlap, and that's where stand-ups and things like that were done. But what we found, it challenged people to, the minute they did come to a blocker, they would almost put it on a little mini backlog that would be brought up at the right time, but then would allow them to move forward with the next thing. And I just wonder, is even how we work and how we think about work going to change? Like, I find, should we be focusing more on our social lives outside of work rather than our social lives inside of work in the new world? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's because it's over the last sort of few weeks, we've been starting to drift back to the office a bit, and just having that, we've been seeing each other, on Teams and everything every day anyway. But yeah, just being able to, they're on the next desk over. I can look around and say, oh, it looks a bit busy. I'm not going to interrupt him now. Not going to sort of disturb their flow. Or yeah, okay, we can have a little bit of a chat, a little bit of banter. And I think that makes a lot of difference, actually. Being physically in the same places as people, I think it helps that social aspect a lot more. When you're distributed and virtual, you got to make more of an effort to do that, and it's easy for it to not happen. So yeah, I think we're benefiting from that. Yeah, we're not full time back in the office, but yeah, having those opportunities on a regular basis, just I think that helps everyone out. Just kind of relax, and you're in work, but actually it can make it less about work, because you can have that informal chat that otherwise, you're calling someone on Teams, and it's a very sort of demanding thing. You got to come and talk to me now because I'm calling you on Teams. You got to stop what you're doing. Whereas, if you're just sort of hanging out in the office, you can have those chats that might just not happen otherwise, I think.
What about yep, I get that bit that you miss. What about what you gain? So, for example, zero commute time, potentially more time with family. Those flip sides.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people will get more out of that than I would. So I was only 10-minute commute from the office anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So that part of it doesn't make too much difference to me, but I know that it does make much more difference to some other people. But yeah, just having that sort of that nice environment around, I can go and take some time away from the keyboard and just go for a walk around our little village here and get into the countryside. I'm very fortunate. I just live right on the edge of town, so I can be 5 minutes down the road and I'm in the middle of a field. It's fantastic. Just sort of you need a little bit of a break and you can get away from it. Whereas I'm not on a business park. The only thing I can be doing is going for a little walk around a business park. It's not the nicest environment.
Yeah, it reminds me of, what was it, in The Office, Slough, was it? The business park they're in, which looked dreadful.
Yeah, it's all very nice where we work, but yeah, it is a little bit like that.
Yeah. I saw the EU is talking about potentially changing employment law, and I know this doesn't affect the UK so much anymore, around returning to work because obviously businesses are continue to run and flourish in a non-in-person environment, and I'm seeing a heap of people saying that if their employer forced them to return to work, they'd be looking for a new job.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of
And
that so coming
yeah,
out of the US certainly.
yeah.
Sort of on the
I wonder
sort of
if there
tech
just
stuff.
needs to be flexibility rather than mandating rules of you must be here or you must do this. That you say, hey, whatever works best for you, and I think that's Microsoft's attitude, right? They're taking the hey, whatever works best with you, and negotiation with your reporting line, do that. And I think a softer line is better than a harder line, perhaps.
Yeah, as an employer, I want what gets the best out of you. And if that's 9 to 5 for you in the office, then fantastic. If you're not going to be doing anything before 10, 11 o'clock, but you're going to get everything done by the end of the day, why do I really care?
Yeah. Yeah. I was reading another article that they were saying introverts have flourished through lockdown because, they're not being forced into uncomfortable situations that they don't excel in and they prefer,
Yeah, I
perhaps.
can imagine all that stuff I just said about these informal chats in the office. I thought that might well not be for you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about how you got into technology. How did you begin your journey there? Was it university? Was it before university? How did you get into tech?
I was kind of lucky as a child. My parents got it was the Sinclair ZX Spectrums. So this was back in the ZX81. I must have been, I don't know, 7, 8 or something. We got that sort of type of computer. We got some of the magazines where it would have all the code printed out for a game, and you would go and try and type it all in and be amazed, like, wow, I made this computer do a thing. I didn't buy it and it just worked. I made that. And I think that inspired me from there to just say, well, okay, I can make this do something. So that was always it for me, I think, from then on, that I'm in control of this and I can make it do what I want it to do. And from there, that was my sort of creative outlet, I think. So yeah, doing that. So from there, sort of, yeah, then through high school, I would sort of put together these little sort of mock-up copies. I got into Delphi and VB and stuff like that, and I could do these little apps that I'd pass around my friends on floppy disks. They would be sort of my own little copy of Microsoft Word, and I would put these little logos on the disks, and then through university, I went and did software engineering at university. And while I was there, I then started doing some shareware programs.
Okay, yep, yeah. Wow, you're the first person I've heard say that.
Yeah, so I actually started making some good money off those. My main one there was some newsgroup software. So you could run your own newsgroup server off your Windows PC.
Nice, nice, which was very important back then.
Yeah, so yeah, that was kind of inspired by, we had a class at university where we were having to pull some messages off newsgroups using some Perl software or something. And then it kind of twigged with me. It's like these magic things. So often, the internet, it wasn't called the cloud at that point, but it's basically the cloud. These are all just using sort of standard things that I can go and write something to go and pull those messages off. And if I can do that side, I can do the server side as well. And that sort of got me thinking about all the server side stuff that we can do. And I think that's kind of a big thing for me, is like sort of pull away the magic. So this isn't a magic thing. Computers have no magic behind them at all. It's just, you might not know how they work, but if you can sort of pull aside the curtain a little bit and start digging beneath the surface, and actually it's like, I can do something with that.
Yeah, amazing. And then you obviously landed your first job.
Yeah, so straight out of university, I did the normal student rounds, sort of going up and down the country trying to land that first job. So I remember sort of going off to interviews with IBM, and I did an interview with GCHQ, which was kind of fun. So our intelligence agency.
Yeah, wow. Is that the UK intelligence
Yeah,
agency?
so that's the UK version of NSA.
Yep.
So yeah, started interviewing all the friends and relations and people, but I ended up not going for that because it was a bit scary. Um, so yeah, what would I be doing for you? I can't tell you. Yeah, okay. Maybe that's not the best first job if I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. So yeah, then I ended up from there at Sage. They did one of the sort of they come around and do the sort of presentations to all the students, and give you some free beers to get you to come along, that sort of thing. So yeah, I ended up there, which was 20 miles away from the university after going around the whole country. So yeah, I was there for 5 years, I think, out of university, doing lots of sort of getting into the whole accountancy business software area. Quite interesting projects there, doing all their reporting tools, sort of their own version of SQL Server reporting services almost. So yeah, that was some sort of good fun, like low level programming in there. But yeah, then eventually the commute broke me. We were living in Durham and commuting to Newcastle every day, which is going up the motorway where there's always accidents every single day. So eventually we decided we've either got to move to Newcastle or we move somewhere else. And we decided London wasn't for us. We weren't particularly interested in doing that whole thing of getting a high-powered job in the city and all the pressure and more commuting and everything that goes with that. So yeah, I ended up moving back home for a while we moving back in with my parents while we sorted out houses and all that. Luckily, sort of just the right time to be around when Data 8 were looking for a new developer. And so I think they must have been about a year and a half old. I remember Anthony, our MD, were getting cakes in for their second anniversary, and the four of us sat around. And it's grown a lot from the sort of little units down by the port side that we used to have there. It's incredible to think going from that to going off to all these international conferences around the whole Microsoft Power Platform stack and sort of meeting all these great people like yourself around the world.
I think the first time I met you was it Atlanta?
No, I didn't go to Atlanta. My first use group was Tampa, 2016.
No, I thought I met you though in Atlanta, as in, you were introduced to me. I was doing a video with Steve Mordew on the conference floor, and I was sure that you were introduced. That was the first time, which was the last BizApp Summit. Was it Orlando, Florida?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that seems like a whole other world away, but
it does, doesn't it? A very long time ago. It's crazy how things have changed. Tell me about getting an MVP.
Wow, yeah. So I think that kind of started. I started doing some of the tools for the XrmToolBox. I think my first one of those was for Fetch XML Builder. Jonas put out a call for somebody to help out with converting queries from Fetch XML to the new web API format that's come out not too long before. And I think actually I was on the train down to another CRM user group in London. And I thought, I've got some time to kill. I'll give it a go. And I think that was my first ever code contribution towards one of the community tools, and it grew from there. I seem to have been sucked into this little world of converting queries between one format and the other. So that was my starting point from that. And then as we got more and more into doing projects around Dynamics at work, we got all these people that were skilled up on SQL and could write complicated queries to get all the data out that they needed, but they didn't know fetch XML. They didn't know how to get data out in sort of efficient ways, in large scale ways out of these dynamic systems. And we were building all this custom stuff. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if they could write an SQL query and there would be some magic going on behind the scenes which converted that into something that Dynamics could understand, and it would pull out all this data. And that's where it kind of started from, could I do that as an internal tool? And then I could see the potential of that and thought, right, I'm going to build this, get this into XrmToolBox, and some other people might like it. And I released that probably actually that Orlando conference, 2019, I think, was about the time I was going to launch it. And it just went crazy from there. Suddenly there was thousands of people using it after the first few weeks, just doing little queries on their data, using it to make changes to their data, and just finding it a helpful way to get to their data without having to go through the, let's try and do this through advanced find or build a fetch XML query. And I kind of got hooked, sort of, I thought it was just going to be one little tool. There's no way I can support all this bits of the SQL language because fetch XML can't support it all, but I'll do this bit and then I'll stop there. And then every time I thought I'm going to stop, it just got in my head, it's like, oh, I'm sure it's possible to take it a little bit further and a little bit further. And then sort of that's gone from just doing that to the last release that I can't remember whether it was just before or just after I actually got the MVP award, was just doing a massive amount more sort of SQL compatibility. And that was my main thing, I think, was producing this tool and then the contributions to other tools around that XrmToolBox space.
So this is SQL to SQL, for CDS. Yeah, so 49,328 downloads. I think it's ranked number 5 of all the tools of all time, which is very impressive.
It's crazy because, I thought it was going to be this little niche thing that...
Sorry, number 4, yeah.
I know, so I started tracking how many queries people had done with it. And I thought, it might be... I would be pleased with like 100 a day or something.
Yeah.
And I think over the last 90 days, it's had over 2 million queries go through it. And there's people doing little queries on their data. There's people doing wholesale, let's bang in hundreds of thousands of records through insert queries. To be honest, there's possibly better tools for the job, but if that's what works for you, then that's great. And I just use it as just a daily part of my workflow now to say I need to go and change a record. I need to go and find a record. I just find it quicker to use that than to I can have written the query and run the query by the time advanced find is opened these days.
Incredible. You're probably going to move to number 3 position too, because Scott Dorrow, who's currently in number 2 with his Ribbon Workbench, has he not announced the retirement of that, I think?
Well, so with the whole the PowerFX commanding thing, so I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I think there'll be a drift towards that, but I think there is, certainly for the time being, there's holes that the new stuff can't do. I think that's always going to be the case, that these older technologies have had so much time to mature, and there's so many little odds and ends that you can only do with that.
That Scott's probably been involved with the development team in building the next thing.
Yes, so
I wouldn't surprise if he's been on contract to Microsoft to deliver this.
Yes, I believe there's something like that. So I think it's going to be it's obviously a big step forwards in making that more accessible, because I remember before Ribbon Workbench, you had to extract these zip files and you had to go and manually edit some XML and rezip it, and then you import it and you get some error messages and you go back and do it again until it finally works. So obviously there's a massive step forwards. The fact that they never actually brought out any of their own tooling because Scott's was so good, kind of that tells you something.
Yeah, interesting. The just how many tools are up there now? 262 tools make up the XrmToolBox. That's pretty phenomenal numbers.
And there's things in there that Microsoft are never going to find the time to do all these little bits and pieces. And the fact that the community does step up to do it, I think just tells you how much time people are willing to put into doing all these things. And the amount of time it must save people.
There's something about the exposure something like that gives you to developing your skills, right? Because it is exposure, and that exposure in the scary sense, and that you're putting your creation up for critical review, right, and feedback.
Yes, and not only that, I'm kind of worried, somebody will run a crazy query against their prod database, and that they've write a delete query, haven't checked it properly, and suddenly they come knocking to say, "Can you help us restore a backup?" There's other things but having that one place to go for tooling at the XRM Toolbox, rather than having, you can imagine if that didn't exist, everyone's got to write all that framework themselves, but also everyone's got to go off. There isn't one single place then to go and find all these tools.
In the old days, it used to be Codeplex, right? Really, before this.
Yeah. So
although Codeplex has kind of become app source, a commercial app source, but Codeplex, I mean, that's where early in my career, with my colleague Guyan Pereira, he was writing tools and putting it up there, and that got us a bunch of new customers to start with. In our early days of starting a practice, this is 15 odd years ago.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I still occasionally the Google searches will lead me towards old Codeplex archives, and but at that point you're kind of relying on people doing a search and landing up on Codeplex and understanding how to use that. Whereas now, so many people can just they open up XRM Toolbox, they'll just do a search for a tool in there. So if you're publish your tool to that, then so many people can go and find that. And hats off to Tanguy for doing that, and for doing the reviewing all these tools before they go in to make sure there's at least some basic level of quality to it, because that's an incredible undertaking.
Awesome. Well, Mark, it's been good talking to you well over time. I always like to wrap up with a few random questions.
Okay.
What was the hardest decision you've ever had to make?
I think it would have to be leaving Sage to go to Data8, to take a jump from a multi-million-pound stock market listed company to 3 people basically in a shed, and believe that that's going to work out, and travel across the country to go and do that.
Awesome. What's the biggest purchase you've ever made?
Apart from a house, house and car, and apart from that, probably my son's last Lego set.
Wow.
Harry Potter Diagon Alley set. It's massive.
Is it really?
It's huge. I had to basically remodel the living room to find somewhere to put it.
Wow, I'm going to look it up. Final one, what's your guilty pleasure?
Oh, gosh. Is it boring to say sneaking off to do a bit more coding of an evening? I'm sat here just before we started recording and I'm tweaking Fetch XML Builder some more.
Wow. Awesome. Mark, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. Please like and subscribe in your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to leave a review, go to podcast.nz365guy.com, where you can see all the other reviews and quickly leave your own one. Anyhow, stay safe out there.